Hello and welcome to my guide to IL. My guide is designed to help you decide what is best and to try and show you how to get the most out of every ship. Now today I'm not specifically talking about ships or anything like that, although a lot of the mechanics are going to come in very helpful for today's video, but I'm going to be talking about base defense, defending your base from attackers, whether they're pirates or players, or pirates being sent at you by players, as you can do with the new neutralist agreement, new-ish at the time of releasing this video at least. So I'm going to take you through 5 of the most effective tips on defending your base. So if you know that you're at risk, or you just want to take the precaution just in case, then this will hopefully help you out. It's going to be very useful if your union is at war with another union. You're going to be able to hold a hive a bit better, or probably even be able to establish a defensive position long enough for your allies to warp over and bring in reinforcements, because your opponents are going to have a bloody hard time dealing with you when you use all or most of these tips. So let's get into it. The first and most surefire way to protect your base is with the peace shield. It's a shield. It takes an hour and a half for it to come online, so you can't just see an enemy fleet coming in and go, poop, shield, I'm safe. It does take an hour and a half for it to work, so it definitely is something that you want to set up if you're going AFK for a while, you're heading off to sleep, whatever, and you don't want to be raided while you're gone. It will protect you for 7 hours, but then it's got an 8-hour cooldown, I believe it is. It means you can't get attacked. No one can attack your base until the shield is over, but you also can't do anything. It stops you from doing any operation commands whatsoever, so you pretty much become in a little sanctuary where nothing will happen to you and you won't be able to do anything to anyone else. It doesn't stop you from launching an attack and then the peace shield comes online. Your fleet will still attack, you just can't do anything other than retreat. So you can still use the retreat command, but you can't do transfer, you can't attack, guard, blockade, nothing like that. And you can't get hurt. But it does have a few downsides. First of all, if your opponents are already coming and they're within an hour and a half of attacking you and you try and activate this, you might be a bit slow. Also, if it goes down, whoever is trying to attack you will know that you won't be able to use a shield for about 8 hours. So they will have quite a bit of time where they know they can make sure they've got everything right, they've got enough firepower, they can get all their allies, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that they wreck your base and destroy everything as quickly as possible before your friends can come and help you out. So those are just a few cons. The peace shield isn't going to be your answer to everything. It's just going to give you a solid few hours of protection as you need it, usually overnight. The second thing is defense hangars. This is the other bare bones way of protecting your base. You unlock the defense hangar with the upgrade at, I believe it's base level 5, that allows you, base level 5, the base defense system. It increases and gives you a hangar of 40 aircraft. These can be fighters or corvettes, it does not matter, but they're completely untargetable, so they sit in here. They don't get any carriers or anything, so you don't get any carrier ships to provide extra buffs. They're just bare bones, but they're completely untargetable, they will never die, and they will just attack the enemy fleet. So it's pretty good. Future tips that I will give will revolve around maximizing the firepower that you can get out of your defense hangar. You can see here I've got CVT 800s. A lot of enemy firepower is going to come from aircraft, and aircraft, when you lose a bunch of different ones, can be a little bit of a nuisance to rebuild and repair, because it's just not as simple. You only have one thing that you can use to build more aircraft back and stuff like that. So you're going to be forcing your enemies to use either resources, retreat their fleet to replenish those aircraft, just stuff like that. but in the end it's not going to, well, it's unlikely to wipe out their entire fleet, just because it's the only AA that I've got in here that will actually work. Stellar Defenders, they're just absolutely beasts. They do a massive amount of anti-ship damage. The main thing that you want to try and achieve with your defense fleet is to blow up enemy ships. In my situation, I know that I want to be blowing up things that are carrying aircraft or blowing up aircraft, because that's what I come into contact with in other servers. Or if you know your opponent a little bit better, like I do, they might have other targets that you might want to try and focus on. But generally speaking, just trying to do as much damage as you possibly can. Nebula chasers are alright too, and I've got just some other strays, just leftovers. Stingrays are bombers, they are good. Strix are good. Vistas are also really good. Newlands are good, but like, if I had a little bit more time and the server wasn't about to end, this bottom section here would be a bit different. But yeah, that's the defense hangar. It is essentially an invincible way of dealing damage, and after your base does get destroyed, if they still destroy your base, which a defense hangar alone is not going to destroy an entire enemy fleet often, then all your aircraft will be removed from the hangar, but they won't be destroyed, and you can just put them straight back in if you want to, or assign them to new carriers and stuff, all that kind of stuff. Next up is asteroid belts and radiation. We'll get into radiation in a sec, but first up, asteroid belts are extremely useful. They prevent all cruisers and bigger from entering, essentially. So only frigates, destroyers, small utility ships, and medium utility ships can go in, which means that if your base is inside here, like some of my friends, then no big ships are going to be able to siege you. No battle cruisers, no carriers, none of that junk is going to be able to hit you. And that is going to deter a lot of people from even attacking you in the first place, because they're not going to go out of their way to remove key elements from their fleets just to attack you until they really have to. Additionally, this doesn't stop you from building those ships, so your base can still be full of a massive army of battlecruisers and carriers if you have the ability to do so. You just won't be able to do anything with them. So if you're inside an asteroid belt and you've got a carrier in your fleet, or a cruiser even, or even a large mining ship, and you want to do anything with that fleet, you just won't be able to. It won't allow you to. So, but if anyone wants to come in, they can't have any of that stuff either. And also, these asteroid belts tend to have lots of like pirates in, so if you clear these, you can get pretty useful nodes that you can dock your base on. They tend to have abundant resources around them a lot as well. And with the Prospectors Agreement, even if they don't have heaps of resources around and they just have a few nodes, you can survive off those for quite a while with your top up when you prospect them. So yeah, that's asteroid belts. They're very, very useful for defending your base and make for excellent guerrilla warfare tactics, which maybe I'll make a video on in the future. Now for radiation. Radiation is a giant zone around the sun or the star in the system that says that only big ships can go here. So it's the polar opposite of the asteroids. You can only have cruisers, battle cruisers, carriers, and large utility ships. This means that if your base is in here, you will only ever be able to do stuff with large ships. So you might try and counter the fact that enemies have to use large ships by having small, really evasive ships in your base to defend your base from being sieged, because generally speaking, larger ships have issues shooting smaller ships and stuff like that due to hit chances and all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. But there is also a few major cons to this as well. First of all being that your opponent can still bring upon you big ships, which is, generally speaking, going to hurt, Of course, if you've got more or yours are bigger, then you will probably still win, plus your defense hanger and all that kind of stuff will give you a good fight. And it's going to stop people who try to use destroyer frigate fleets, which are very common these days. They're very good, they're very effective, they're fast, everything you need them to be. They're replaceable, point efficient, cost efficient, easy to replace, as I just said, replaceable. But yeah, so it's going to stop all that kind of stuff, and if they've got Xeno Stingers or some kind of destroyer carrier in their fleet, then they're going to have to drop those and try and bring something else. And if they don't have many cruisers and stuff to build up a base of their fleet, it's going to take a lot of time and resources for them to deliberately do so. So yeah, the other major con is that there's rarely resources in this area. If I zoom out, I've got this resource button. It pretty much puts a grid and shows you the quantity and quality of resources in green. Most of this area is completely bland. You can see the radiation is this cool kind of greenish color. There's no resources around here. There's some resources outside, like around this planet where it's got this ring around it, which is pretty cool, this ring of resources. But really the only area in this entire radiation zone is this city, collection of cities rather, where the Stargate is, at least on this map, and a lot of the other maps are similar. There's very few areas that are radiation and have resources in them. So you're gonna probably struggle to have resources unless you have advanced mining platforms, but they can also be sitting ducks and get quite readily hunted as well. So if you're not in a good position or your mining platform isn't in a good position, your AMP could just get destroyed very, very easily. But if you do have good positioning and you've gone well early game before war or whatever issue is causing you to be likely to get attacked, hopefully you've got resource areas in the radiation if you like to use your bigger ships instead of the asteroids, and you can support yourself that way. The other option is to hopefully have a good union and some nice friends, and maybe have your advanced mining platform in the one of the main hives or in an asteroid belt where you've got other friends around there, and you can all share the resources that way, even though you're the one with the platform there, because they can still mine in your platform if they're in the same union. So yeah, that's the radiation and asteroid belts. Next up is having an escape plan. This is very, very important. Have outposts around the map, or that you can relocate to if you get attacked. So if you're online and you see the enemies coming for you, then you can relocate when they hit you. Ideally, you'd try and relocate like as they launch the attack thing to try and spend their AP and waste their time, which is very, very valuable in PvP, like Union War situations. It's a little change, but it can make a massive difference. Of course, do whatever's better. Don't risk your entire base and all of your ships just for a chance of spending some extra AP and time, because it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. But yeah, that is just a narky little trick there for you. And the other thing is, if you know that you're likely to get attacked and you don't want all your ships to be at your base defending, send them away. Send them to one of your other outposts, or just send them into the middle of nowhere. Like if I wanted to keep my ships alive if I got attacked, I'd grab them and I'd send them, I don't know, right here. There's no bad guys here, there's no hostiles, just send them right here. And the enemy is unlikely to find them or track them down and hunt them, because there's really no point. Or you send them over to some allies and hope that they're not under as big of a risk. Like if my union had a hive, They send them like over to where there's a bunch of other people, but that's a graveyard, so that's kind of sad. Send them over to the hive, maybe guard a platform or use the escort command or blockade, something like that, just to keep all your fleets protecting each other so they don't get singled out in case they do get hunted. But that's if you're sending them to an area where there's friendlies to try and support, but they still are moderately high risk, or just send them into somewhere where no one's going to find them, and then retreat them or instant retreat them with preferred modules when you need them back, and that will keep your ship safe for you. And also it will keep your base safe because you don't want to get zeroed, so you just relocate away. You can only relocate once every 24 hours, so do be aware of that. You can't just bounce around the map and constantly put up things. You can only relocate once every 24 hours, so once your enemy sees you do it, they know you're a sitting duck for 24 hours. Last but not least, you've probably wondered why I have a whole bunch of fleets of a single ship just here. If you've been paying attention to my operations tab to the side, and it's purely for demonstration for this video because I do not really intend to be attacked, hopefully. At this point in time, I'm trying to reassemble a combat fleet for the last ditch effort for fun and blowing stuff up before my season ends in 80 hours. But fleets of one, every single ship you have in your base, turn into a fleet of one. It's a tedious process, I know. It can take a boring... it can't take a boring amount of time. It is a boring amount of time, and it can take a lot of time, and then you have to dismantle all those fleets afterwards. It's just not fun to do, and therefore it can deter a lot of people from doing it. But if you are like trying to hold a position, or you do know that there's enemies coming for you, and you do want to put up a fight and not just run for it because the position that you're in is important for one reason or another, or you're just that kind of person and you're stubborn, then turn all of your fleets into fleets of one, all your ships into fleets of one singular ship. This means that every single time your opponent destroys one of your ships, they have to stop. They move on to the next fleet of a singular ship. All of their weapons lock on. They shoot. And they've destroyed a whole ship and it's been like 5 seconds. All the while, your defense hangar of 40 ships is still hurting them. And all of your other 30, 40, 50 fleets are still shooting. You do lose some like synergies if you're using heals and stuff, or something like that, but generally speaking, you will get more out of this. Your defense hangar will do a lot more damage. You'll suck up a lot more of the enemy's time. They will feel less happy about destroying all of your fleets, because there's just something about seeing someone's fleet just being blown to smithereens by your own, and to just watch their hit points just go down as you see all their ships go kaboom and pop like balloons or explode or whatever. When they're constantly stopping and starting to see a single frigate destroy a single cruiser die, and it's just wasting their time at that point. It's a lot less rewarding for them. They're taking a lot more damage. They're not getting as much XP. It's a lot less of a win on their side, and you're doing a lot more damage, because instead of 6 of your destroyers being killed in 10-15 seconds because really high powered enemies, they're destroying 1 every 5 seconds, and that's a pretty big difference. And then all your other ones are still doing damage. Your other aircrafts causing havoc. You've got your defense hangar, you've got your defensive cannons, they do some nice work too. And it just adds up to a lot more damage. It takes up a lot more of the enemy's time. They'll suffer a lot more casualties, and you will just get a much more effective fight, rather than seeing your 2 or 3 fleets being completely decimated and triple teamed. There's no more triple teaming. You're ganging on them with a massive army of single ship fleets that are all doing their thing, and they're all targeting as they normally would in a big fleet, except that they're not being cohesively destroyed. It's probably one of the biggest things. Like, if you're a full fleet of, like, cruisers, you've got 300 or 400 points of cruisers, and you've got your main fleets of destroyers and frigates, and you're in Asteroid Belt, and your opponents come in with 3 or 4 fleets to try and take you out, and here you are with 50 odd fleets of a singular ship with a defense hangar full of good like aircraft that you've specifically picked out for the purpose of targeting light ships or aircraft which you know that your enemies are going to bring. They're going to leave crying, and they could even retreat because they suffer a heavy amount of casualties as their fleets get ganged on by massive numbers of your own fleets, and you're only losing one ship at a time, even though it might be every 5 seconds you lose a ship. That is a lot better results, and you will do a lot more damage with all that extra time that you buy. And if they do manage to chew it out the entire way, and they get to your base, by the time they've done that, any fleets that you've salvaged have been recovered and sent back to the Fae, and soak up even more time before they end up having to do the tedious process of doing no siege damage for ages while they siege your base, because siege damage is hard to come by. Then yeah, you've just made a significantly larger dent in your opponent's force, and you've achieved a lot more. So yeah, that's my 5 tips on defending your base in Infinite Lagrange, or Infinite Lagrange, however you pronounce it. And yeah, I hope you find this really helpful and you use it. Any of these tips, any from a single one of them to all of them to none of them won't help you a lot. But the more you use, the more you'll get out of them. Because they all sort of work together, especially if you're smart with your selections of ships and stuff and your defense hangar selections. Of course, if you have the collection. If you don't have the collection to specifically choose for certain situations, then you sort of just have to try and make the most out of what you do have, which is what I'm a big fan of, having never spent money on the game and playing with what I've got. It's always about making the most of what you do have, not having the best thing for every situation. So yeah, I will see you next time. Have a good one, and yeah, catch ya.